running free.
That's my favorite song. No matter what's happening, I love it so much. Well, 2 years ago, it was my 40th birthday. Oh my God, I can't believe it. You look amazing. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I was in the middle of a really incredible trip to London, which was paid for by someone else. I don't care where it is, that's the best kind of trip, I think. I spoke at a keynote, I gave a keynote at a conference, I did a really good job, and that means I must have done a good job because of the topic today. If you think you did a good job and you're neurodivergent, you really killed it. You know, we are very critical of ourselves. I nailed it. And then afterwards, my partner and I are about to do all the London stuff, and I get an email. I get an email from my absolute favorite client saying, Trystan, when you get back from London, I need to have a conversation with you. I have some feedback for you. And I was like, I'm a grown man. I can wait. That sounds good. And my partner said, absolutely the fuck you will. Because if you wait until we get back home, you will not eat, you will not sleep, and you will enjoy no part of London while we are here. You are going to email her back, and you're going to say, I'd love to talk to you sooner if possible. And you're going to schedule a call, which I did, and it was fine. Not inside my body, it wasn't fine. But when it was done, and I had pretended that it was fine, it was 3 a.m. in London because of the time change, and that is how badly I needed to have this resolved. And as a 40-year-old man, as of that day, I was like, this is something I need to figure out. If my favorite client, who I have worked with for years, cannot give me, with love and kindness and care and trust, the smallest amount of feedback without it literally derailing my entire London trip, this is something I need to figure out. And thank goodness for our partners, if we have them, who can be a reflection on us. But that was when I started digging into this topic of rejection sensitivity, because I realized that I couldn't keep doing this to myself. That was the start of my 2-year journey on this. And to tell you a little bit more about me, puts a little more context here. I live in Portland, like a lot of you that I've met. I was diagnosed with ADHD when my son was diagnosed with ADHD. Any other adult diagnosed neurodivergent folks? Amazing, shout out. I wanted to support my son when he was diagnosed, and so I read a bunch of books and a bunch of articles, and I was like, oh no, I thought this was how your brain worked. No. So at 35, I was diagnosed with ADHD. Halfway through the assessment, the psychiatrist said, I'm going to stop you right there. You don't need to finish. We're good. You definitely have ADHD. Like we just heard, there are many ways that we can leverage the super amazing parts of us, and I've been able to do that by being a professional facilitator. I can read a room really well. I don't get distracted despite what people say, by what's happening in the room. I can keep a lot of things going, and so this is my job. This is what I get to do. And I am a transgender man. It means I have an additional layer of fear of rejection because of all the transphobia I've experienced in my life. And I think those of us who live at multiple points of marginalization are even more uniquely impacted by rejection sensitivity because we have been rejected more often, and often in even more brutal and at times violent ways. And because I live in a fantasy world, I decided when I got pregnant and decided to have a baby myself as a transgender man, I decided to tell my story publicly because I thought people would be like, this is amazing. They did not. Some people did. A lot of people did not. So just in case you think, Trystan seems very confident, I bet he's never been rejected. Thousands of people on the internet have written in the comments sections every horrible thing I've ever thought about myself. So I come to rejection sensitivity honestly. And you know, like Dr. Celine, who we just heard, I am also a tiny tender flower when it comes to rejection. I really would like it if people liked me. And I really would not like to let anybody down. And with that has always come a sense of isolation. This is something I never heard about until 2 years ago when I was like, what is wrong with me? To Google. And then once I had some language, I started to see it everywhere. And I stopped feeling quite as lonely and scared and like there was something wrong with me. And the first pop culture person that I ever saw that I was like, yes, is Michael Scott from The Office. Icon, ADHD icon, I have found, right? So here's him. He has a lot of deadlines on this day, and instead of doing any of these low dopamine tasks, he is tapping his mug saying, I don't want to work. I just want to bang on this mug all day. And I was like, yes, I am not alone. I am not alone. Michael Scott gets me. Not only does he embody NeuroDiversion, which I learned is a word I learned from TikTok, which is when you have a lot of low dopamine tasks, none of which you want to do. Not only does he embody that, but he does not handle rejection well. We are very deeply connected, me and him. One of the most famous memes of Michael Scott is him saying, do I need to be liked? No. I like to be liked. I enjoy being liked. I have to be liked. But it's not like this compulsive need to be liked, like my needs to be praised. Solidarity, my friends. I would like constant positive feedback, please, which is very fun for my partner and children. Also, for those of you who don't know The Office, there is a time when Michael thinks that it would be a good idea to invite his entire staff to roast him. Guess how well that went? Not good, right? So he also does not really have the self-awareness that he needs, right? It doesn't go well for him. He invites people to his party, no one comes. That's one of my worst fears, right? Doesn't go well. No one came to his party. And here's an actual picture of me when I am experiencing rejection sensitivity. That's what's happening, right? This feeling of awkwardness, terrible, just the worst. So I'm curious now that we've seen a couple of manifestations of how this can look for people. We heard some really good definitions already. The only thing I want to add to what we heard from Dr. Celine, I did this is not science or data, it's just me. I added a physical response because I think we're missing a key piece when we think about rejection sensitivity as purely emotional. It lives in my body. And I think trying to make that connection for me was very helpful because often our bodies will communicate to us long before our brains do. And by the time they communicate to our brains, we're already off the rails. So having that little bit of that embodied understanding, the somatic awareness can be really helpful. I put disproportionate in quotes because I think that's very judgy. But people might say we have a disproportionate response to anticipated, perceived, or real rejection. We often expect it before it even comes, right? We've got some of those negative behaviors. What can I do proactively? In this room, I was standing back there when Gary Ware was out here doing his amazing thing. 4 people walked in front of me and said sorry. They did nothing wrong. They are literally existing in the world, walking from one place to another, not even interrupting me, right? So that's part of that people pleasing, right? And no judgment to those people who said, sorry, I see you, I feel you. I am also Canadian. I also think, honestly, I do a lot of one-on-one coaching. I coach a lot of women who are like, I know I have to say sorry less. I said, no, you don't. Men need to say sorry more. However, you shouldn't say sorry if you didn't do anything wrong, right? That's a little nuance there. So, and then we heard about this. Often we might take just the littlest thing that is neutral and then, so what you're saying is you hate me, right? Is that what you're saying? No, I want you to get ice cream at the store. I'm actually, because of my ADHD, not allowed to go to the grocery store. I put that boundary on myself. And my kids will tell strangers, oh, my dad's not allowed to go to the store, which sounds wild, but it's because I don't get anything useful. So I would love to see those of you who do, now that you've got some language, maybe you heard of it before or not, I'm not going to call on anyone, don't worry, but how many folks here feel like, yes, that's probably something that okay, great, that's very helpful. I was going to do a whole slide on allyship. I don't need to do that. We will stay in the personal here. And so I'm curious, I mentioned the bodily experience, right? We use a lot of intellectual words. Anxiety, what does that mean? Dread, what does that mean? So just shout out what happens physically in your body when you get that email. Okay, Somebody says stomach stuff, nausea, shutdown. High heart rate, Secretary's Reese's, what? Oh, temperature. Yes, I call that hot face. Yes, yep, I know. Ooh, I am not gonna do well in this conversation because I could feel my face is getting hot. Yep, sweating, right? It's the increased heart rate. Anything else? Tight chest, yeah. Oh yeah, stiff neck. Some of the people talk about like racing thoughts, which I get, I know what you're gonna say, and I'm gonna tell you why you're wrong in 12 different ways, because I'm actually good. Other people it's like I'm in slow motion. Like I literally cannot find the words because my brain has stopped working, right? So again, our bodies are telling us what's going on before our brains even catch up. So if you can sort of stop the train before it goes off the tracks, that can be helpful, and we're gonna talk more about that in just a second. Why does this happen more to neurodivergent people than others? The data is mixed and there's not a lot of it, so I guessed, like a good scientist, based on my own experience, here are some things that I think are maybe why this is uniquely prevalent with us. My Lyft driver, right, as I was coming in yesterday, was like, but doesn't everyone struggle with rejection sensitivity? I said, I'll tell you, I'll give you an example. I found out on the Uber app that when you rate your driver, they rate you. And I found out that you can see your rating. I want you to suffer the way that I have suffered. And when I saw that it was 4.9 stars, I deleted the app and I have never used it again. So I'm like, however a neurotypical person thinks they're rejection sensitive, they have no idea how high I can fly. It is profound. So I have reframed some of the negative things that I've seen, but I think that we want to be good, right? It is not bad to care whether you're having a negative impact on other people. It is not bad to notice that you're walking in front of someone and might be obstructing their view. That's actually great, right? It's lovely. And also, we need to belong. Every human needs to belong. It's one of the core traits. Our ancestral brains, right? Our ancestors were the best at not getting kicked out of the group. That's how we lived, right? We want to belong. And also, we may not notice that we interrupted someone 3 times in a row. And that may butt up against those of us who consider ourselves to be socially just people in the world. I am transgender, yes. I am a man. I am a white man, right? I don't want to interrupt a woman. I don't want to interrupt a person of color. And yet my body and my brain and my mouth just sometimes gets away from me. That's actually why I love doing things on Zoom, because I can mute myself when I'm not talking and then I never interrupt anyone. Pro tip for the other white dudes in the room, you're welcome. So we might not know, and then we get in trouble. We didn't even know that we broke a rule, and now we have, and we're in trouble. And then we have, as I said, I won't say we, I don't know your story. I was treated like crappy crap for being too much, like we heard Dr. Celine say, too much, too loud, like too enthusiastic. I have not gotten those criticisms now that I am traversing the world as a man, so I will just double click on what she said. Very different. And also, I am still a lot. I was a lot as a child, I am still a lot, right? A lot of us have been punished and bullied and put down and belittled, right? So we come to rejection sensitivity honestly, we earned it. And that doesn't mean we get to weaponize it against the people around us. People have to be able to tell us, hey, you missed the mark. Hey, you hurt my feelings. Hey, I think you could do better next time, right? They have to be able to do that without us saying no or crumbling or getting defensive or whatever your unique response is. So I'm gonna introduce to you, I actually use this not just with rejection sensitivity, but anytime I do training on neurodiversity, neurodivergence, I think about our growth, my own growth, our growth, could come into sort of 4 categories. The first thing is building that self-awareness, right? That's why I asked you the question about the body stuff. If you can get a sense of, oh no, it's happening, or even more neutrally, it's happening. Of course it's happening. I got an email. My boss put a time on my calendar that just says check-in. Why would you do that to me? Who is that good for, right? So to have that awareness, here it is. Worst case scenario, here it is. Just building that awareness. That way we're not reacting, we can actually respond. Second one is acceptance. I have rejection sensitivity. Okay, it is a part of who I am. I'm trans, I'm a parent, this is another part of who I am. Right, again, not to use it to get out of any responsibility or accountability for anything. And like, it's who you are. This one, by the way, is the hardest. That's why I kind of bury it in the middle. But I think this is a lifelong journey. I think it takes a very long time to try to navigate the world as a neurodivergent person and to really accept who you are. Next one is to get some skills around self-advocacy. And that's where we're gonna dig in just a second. But how do we ask for what we need? I'm gonna give you some scripting if that's helpful. And this is the thing that I think is most difficult when I'm doing trainings, when I'm doing coaching. People are like, I don't know how to ask. I don't know what I can ask for. So we will talk about that in a minute. And also the system can't always change for us. So yes, how can we adapt to the system? Ideally, the advocacy piece is first, you're asking the system to adapt to you. You can adapt to the system. So a good example of this is I had a wonderful boss when I worked at the National Gay and Lesbian Task Force. I didn't have the rejection sensitivity language. It's always been obvious. And so I remember I submitted a time off request and she emailed me back, hey Trystan, just so you know, I'm going to approve your time off request. And I'd like to meet with you to figure out how you can get your work done before your vacation. Because she had learned, if she said, Trystan, we need to meet about your time off request, in my mind, I'm not going on that trip with my parents. That's the first place I go, right? She adapted to me, and then I was like, yes, we can wait till Thursday before I do that, right? So I can adapt to her. So those are the 4 things. So then how do we adapt? Get practice. I promise, promise, promise. The more you ask, hey, how am I doing? The more likely you are to catch someone when they're like at a 2 instead of a 10. This drives my partner crazy because maybe I do a little bit too much. I'm just trying here. How am I doing? You know, how are things going? Especially if you do them in sort of low stake situations. I'll sometimes ask my kids, like, how am I doing as your dad? Am I doing a good job? Kids will tell you straight up. They will tell you. But the more you ask and you catch things when they're little things, yeah, it really hurt my feelings when you said whatever yesterday. Great. I don't want to wait 3 weeks for my 14-year-old to be like, 3 weeks ago, you did this thing and she's been sitting with it and it's been getting bigger. I can feel in my body that she's mad at me, but I don't know why. So those little proactive things, the muscle gets, right? And then for those of you who are already operating at this level and are ready for that leveling up, and if there's a power dynamic, a power differential between you and the person you're asking, like say you want to ask someone you supervise, hey, how am I doing as your supervisor? Do I have your back in the way you need? 9 times out of 10, they're going to say everything's fine. Okay, model a self-critique. I'm so glad everything's working for you. You know, I noticed that I spoke over you in the meeting last week. I want you to know I noticed that. I'm going to make sure it doesn't happen again. And you're telling yourself a new story, right? It is okay to have feedback. It is okay to miss the mark. Second tip, even if in your body the word that you're thinking is F you, if you can say out of your mouth is thank you, it tricks the body. Asking a question from curiosity, can you tell me a little bit more? It tricks the body out of that fight or flight mode, or the I'm being chased by very slow tigers is sometimes how my anxiety feels. Right size the fear. What is the likelihood that your worst case scenario is going to happen? And I had a conversation with someone in the back not an hour ago, and we talked about this, and I was like, no, but what's the worst case scenario? And it was like, okay, I can actually say it. What is the percentage likelihood it's going to happen? It's not 0, which is fine, but sometimes just writing it down or saying it out loud. What was the likelihood that a woman I've been working with for 4 years, because of one thing I did, was going to fire me? Very low, very low. And what if she did fire me? What would happen? Would it suck? Yes. Would I end up with no business, destitute, divorced, and my kids are taken away from me? Probably not. I mean, I can tell you right now, no, right? There will be other clients. So just going all the way and then be like, oh, that sounds silly. In fact, the person I was talking to back there was saying it out loud. I was like, now that I'm saying it out loud, I hear how stupid it sounds. I'm like, yes, it is. That's okay, right? But that's how we kind of right-size it. Does that make sense? Okay, great. And then the last piece is, it's okay to be uncomfortable. There's nothing wrong with you if you're uncomfortable, if you're anxious. No one needs to be punished for it. No one needs to make you feel better. Sometimes you can just say, this really sucks. I don't want to wait till Thursday to have that conversation. And that's okay. And that's something I don't think in our culture we're great at, is just being like, oh, I can do this. So that's how I try to reframe it. All right, the last thing I want to say is, oh wait, I'm going to hide this because I know you're going to read it. The last thing I want to say is, I actually don't think it's possible to never have rejections. I'm so sorry. I don't think it can be fixed or cured. I think it's kind of in our wiring. However, it can get way better. I know I already said I was going to say one more thing. I'm going to say two more things. One is what I learned in theater school is that the chemicals that are created in our bodies that tell us to be afraid or anxious or nervous, chemically, the compound is the same as the chemical that's released by our brain when we're excited. So sometimes I'm able to successfully trick myself, sometimes, into thinking I'm really excited to have this conversation with this client. I'm going to learn some things. I'm going to get better, right? That's a gift. What would have been worse than her not emailing me to ask if she could give me feedback? What would have been worse? Just firing me, not renewing the contract. Being passive-aggressive, yes. Blasting me on social media. The fact that she came directly to me is the testament that she trusts me, that I trust her, that she knew she could come to me and I would say, oh my gosh, thank you so much for telling me. You're totally right. I can tweak that next time, right? So the other example I want to give of how things can get better is Michael Scott. The very final episode of The Office, he gives the absolute ugliest doll to his biggest critic, Oscar, in The Office. And Oscar says, thank you, Michael, it's beautiful. And we cut to Michael laughing harder than Michael has ever laughed. And he says, it looks like it was made by a 2-year-old monkey in a farm. He just accepted it, that I put all this work into it. He has the lowest opinion of me of anybody. And I mean, look at him laughing, right? You can get to a place where it's like, oh yeah, like it is okay for people to be mad at me, right? It is okay. We will be okay. That's some of the self-talk I do, right? Is at first it was no one's mad at me. Then it was not everyone is mad at me. And now it's people are allowed to be mad at me. And even if it doesn't feel good, and even if I still get hot face, I do try to think about Michael laughing about the person whose opinion he cares about the most, who thinks that he's just the worst, and that you can eventually get to a place where you can just laugh about it instead of crying. Thank you.